They said the drums of fate never beat without warning. But what happened that night in the city of Lucama silenced even the loudest gossipers. It was the kind of moment people whispered about for years to come. Under the pounding roar of rain, a man named Ekin slammed the heavy wooden door of his grand house, locking out the very people who had helped him build it. On the other side stood Naya, his wife, soaked to the bone, clutching their two small children. Tears mingled with the rain as the children sobbed in fear, their tiny arms wrapped around her waist. And inside, Ekin laughed with his. New mistress on his lap and wine in hand, he celebrated his new beginning, while the woman who had sacrificed everything for him stood abandoned under the sky's fury. But Lucama would remember. Before betrayal, before riches, and before that cruel night, there had been love, real love. Naya and Ekin were once inseparable. They had arrived in Lucama with only dreams and calloused hands. She was a seamstress, with eyes full of fire. He was a carpenter, ambitious and hungry. They worked side by side beneath the red sun of Lucama's markets, selling, bartering, sweating, laughing. She would stitch until her fingers bled, and he would craft stools and tables from termite-bitten wood. They slept on raffia mats, counted coins by candlelight, and shared porridge from the same calabash bowl. Naya sold her late grandmother's coral beads and even pawned her wedding wrapper, just so Ekin could buy timber and tools. They dreamt together, built together, prayed together, and Lucama watched as they rose. Their work bore fruit. Ekin's furniture business blossomed. People traveled from neighboring towns just to buy his carved thrones and polished cabinets. Naya's hands, once bruised from labor, now crafted garments for chiefs' wives. The city began to speak their names with respect. The once struggling couple became the heart of Lucama's small business scene. They bought land, a home, and enrolled their children in the best school in the region. They held feasts where old friends gathered to dance under the moon. Neighbors whispered that they were blessed by the ancestors. But blessings, when mishandled, can spoil into curses. As money poured in and fame followed, Ekin changed. He stopped attending the morning market with Naya. He hired assistants, but grew cold with his family. He started buying imported perfumes, silk shirts, and drove a new horse-drawn cart plated with brass. Then came Abeni. Abeni was beauty cloaked in charm and mystery. Her laugh was like river water over stones, and her words poured honey into Ekin's ears. She told him he was too big for a woman like Naya. She said he deserved someone with polish, someone who fit his new status. Ekin believed her. Every day, Abeni's lies carved deeper into Ekin's heart, replacing the memories of Naya's loyalty with contempt. He came home late, reeking of rose, oil, and wine. He stopped playing with the children, no longer asked Naya about her day. He accused her of holding him back, of being too simple for a man of vision. Naya, the same woman who had skipped meals so he could eat, who had sold every precious heirloom to fund his dream, he called her irrelevant. It happened on a night when the clouds were thick and thunder prowled the hills. Naya returned from fetching cassava at the market to find her clothes thrown into the mud. The door was barred. Her children clung to her, crying. Ekin stood behind the door and shouted, "Go back to where you came from. I have a new life now." Abeni's voice echoed behind him, soft and poisonous. Naya didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply stood in the rain, the weight of every sacrifice soaking her skin. Her children trembled. Her stomach churned from hunger. People peered from windows, but closed them just as fast. That night, Naya looked at the sky and made a vow that burned through her bones. Let this be the last night my children suffer. Let the world remember me not as the woman cast out, but as the one who rose like morning sun after a long storm. and the spirits heard her. Naya wandered Lucama's alleys with her children, sleeping under broken canopies, eating discarded yam peels. She became invisible to the same people who once envied her. Her children grew silent, their laughter stolen by hardship. Yet she never begged for herself. She would hum lullabies while they shivered. She tore her only scarf in half to cover them at night. Her fingers cracked from cold, but her heart held firm. And while Ichin believed he was rising higher with each step away from his old life, the truth was different. What he thought was success was already starting to fall apart beneath him. Abeni's sweet lies had already torn apart the home he once shared with Naya and their children. But soon, those same lies would begin to tear Ikon down too. Because no matter how far you try to run from the people who once loved you, the truth always finds you. And for Ikon, that truth was coming quickly. Nia's life changed in a single night. One day she had a house, even if it was full of pain. The next day, she and her children were on the streets with only the clothes they wore. Rain poured down on them as they walked. The cold crept into their skin and settled deep into their bones. They had no home, no food, no money. And worse, no one to turn to. People they once called friends now crossed the road to avoid them. Some looked at her with pity. Some pretended not to see her at all. At night, Naya wrapped her arms tightly around her children, holding them close on the hard pavement, trying to keep them warm. Their small stomachs growled with hunger, but she had nothing to give them. The woman who once smiled with hope now begged at the edges of the market, asking for a coin here and there. Just enough to buy a piece of bread. Just enough to feed her children one bite each. Every time someone ignored her, it hurt more. Every time someone looked away, it cut her heart deeper. But she kept going, not because she wasn't tired, not because she wasn't heartbroken. She kept going because her children needed her to. Days turned into weeks. Their clothes became dirty and full of holes. Her children no longer played. They no longer laughed. Silence and sadness sat on their faces. One afternoon, Naya walked past a shop and caught her reflection in the glass. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her face was thin, her eyes tired, her hair messy. She looked like a ghost of who she used to be. She felt like a failure. She wondered if she would ever rise again. What Naya didn't know was that someone had been watching her since the first day she appeared on the streets. An old man named Baba Kido sat by the corner of the marketplace. He sold grains and herbs. Many people ignored him, thinking he was just another old trader. But Baba Kido saw everything. He saw how Naya comforted her children with soft whispers, even when she had nothing to give. He saw how she broke her bread into two, giving the bigger half to her youngest child. He saw how, even with her pain, she never once begged with anger. Baba Kito recognized pain. He had lived long and seen many storms. He saw something strong inside Naya, a quiet fire that had not died. Even if she had forgotten, it was still burning inside her. While others saw a woman in rags, Baba Kito saw a warrior. He waited and watched. He knew her time would come. Then, one morning, the streets were busy with people shopping for food. Naya sat with her children, weak from hunger. She had only a few coins in her hand, barely enough for a small loaf of bread, but she watched her children, making sure they were safe. Suddenly, a loud cry broke through the noise. A young boy had tripped while running and cut his leg on a broken bottle. Blood poured down his shin. He screamed in pain. But no one helped. People walked past, shaking their heads or pretending not to hear. Naya didn't hesitate. She stood up and ran to the boy. She tore a piece from her already torn skirt and wrapped it around his leg, pressing gently to stop the bleeding. She knelt beside him and spoke softly, calming his cries. Her own pain didn't matter. Her hunger didn't matter. All she saw was a child who needed help. She stayed with him until someone came looking. What Naya didn't know was that the boy's father had seen everything. That man was not just a simple market trader. He was Baba Kito. When he reached the boy and saw how Naya had cared for his son, his heart was touched. He had watched her kindness from afar, but now he had seen it up close. He turned to the people nearby and asked about her. Everyone knew her story. How Ekin had thrown her out. How she now lived in the streets. How she struggled to keep her children alive. Baba Kito couldn't understand how someone so kind, so strong, could be living like this. Something moved deep inside him. He walked up to Naya. She looked up at him, unsure what he would say. "You didn't have to help my son," he said. "You had nothing to gain." She shook her head. "He was bleeding. He's a child, and someone had to care." Baba Kito nodded slowly. He reached out his hand. "Come with me," he said. "I want to give you a chance, not out of pity, but because I see your strength. I see your heart, and I believe you can rise again." Naya's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She just nodded, clutching her children tightly. After so long in the shadows, someone had finally seen her worth. And with that one small moment, the story of her rise had begun. The next morning, Naya held her children's hands tightly as she walked to Baba Kito's office. Her heart beat fast, filled with hope and fear. She didn't know what to expect. All she knew was that someone was finally giving her a chance. Baba Kito met her at the front gate himself. "You'll start with simple work," he said kindly. "There's a lot to learn, but I believe you can do it." That one moment, one small offer of kindness, became the start of everything. Helping. An injured child had opened a door Naya never imagined she could walk through. A door that had been shut in her face so many times before. She didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a journey that would transform not just her life, but her children's future too. For the first time in years, fate had started to smile on her. Naya began her new job humbly. She didn't arrive with big dreams, just a quiet hope that her children would have food each night. She swept the floors of Baba Kito's trading company before sunrise, cleaned desks, carried sacks of grain, and organized storage bins. Any task given to her, she did it with care and attention. No one had to tell her twice. She listened, observed, and always wore a gentle smile. Even when her feet ached and her hands were sore, people noticed. The staff whispered about the quiet woman who worked harder than anyone else. One day, someone lost a leather wallet in the washroom. Naya found it and returned it to the front desk without opening it. That small act made even more people respect her. Baba Kito was watching too. He saw how honest and trustworthy she was. Slowly, he gave her more responsibility. First, she moved from sweeping to managing the storeroom. She counted inventory and tracked goods with perfect accuracy. Then she started helping with customer orders. She handled deliveries and even began learning how the supply chains worked. Naya never bragged. She didn't rush. She didn't ask for praise. She just kept working, learning, and growing. Weeks turned to months. Her name began to spread within the company. Staff looked to her for guidance. Traders started asking for her by name. Her pay increased. She was able to rent a small room, a real roof for her children. Soon, she enrolled them in school. For the first time in years, her children ate warm meals every night and slept on soft mats. The house wasn't big, but it was filled with laughter again. While Naya's light slowly rose, Ikon's world was falling apart. The business he built on pride and lies began to break. Abeni, the woman who once praised him, now demanded more and more money. She wanted silk clothes, gold bracelets, and a life full of comfort. Ikan made risky trades and borrowed heavily. To keep up, he started cheating his partners, lying to investors. He ignored warnings from those who tried to help him. His name began to stink in the mouths of the marketplace, and the news spread like wildfire. His company was under investigation. Banks closed their doors to him. His clients walked away. His so-called friends no longer answered his calls. The same man who once laughed behind closed doors while Naya stood crying in the rain now sat surrounded by debt and shame. Everything he had chosen over family was now slipping through his fingers. And the name he heard again and again? Naya. People praised her strength, her honesty, her patience, her power. Investors who had once shaken hands with Ikan now sought out Baba Kito's company and asked specifically to meet the woman who had become its rising star. The very life that once crushed Naya now held her up. And the life that Ikan thought he controlled? It was slipping away. One morning, loud voices buzzed through Lucama. Newspapers landed on shop counters and wooden benches. Children ran through the streets holding them up, from street to power. The headlines read. Right below the title was a full-color photo of Naya. She stood beside Baba Kito, dressed in clean, elegant clothes. Her eyes calm, her smile soft, her hands folded with grace. People who once turned their heads when she begged in the market now stared at her picture with wide eyes. The woman they had ignored was now being called a hero, an example, a queen. Radio stations told her story. TV stations invited her for interviews. Social media lit up with messages and photos celebrating her journey. Business leaders from near and far began requesting meetings with Baba Kito, hoping to meet Naya. They trusted her. They respected her. Some even said Baba Kito's company wouldn't have reached its new success without her. She had become more than just a worker. She was the heart and soul of the company. But Naya never changed. She stayed kind, humble. She never forgot the nights on the pavement or the taste of hunger. She never stopped walking her children to school, and how those children had changed. The same little ones who once cried in the cold now wore clean uniforms. Their shoes shone. Their heads were high. They answered questions in class with confidence. Their teachers praised them. Their classmates wanted to befriend them. Naya's success became their strength. Her story gave them wings. But far across town, Ikan sat in silence. The man who had once slammed the door on his family now flipped through a newspaper with shaking hands. Every headline felt like a wound. Every picture of Naya, every word of praise cut him deeper than the last. He saw the woman he once called useless now being celebrated by the whole city. And on the streets, people pointed and whispered, "Look at Naya. She's a queen now." Ikan buried his face in his palms. His name, once spoken with pride, was now linked to scandal and disgrace. His empire had crumbled. Benny, who once promised him love and luxury, had vanished. His business was gone. His wealth disappeared. His so-called friends no longer picked up his calls. All he had left was bitterness and regret. As he watched Naya's name rise like the morning sun, it finally struck him. He had thrown away a rare jewel. The woman he once mocked, the one he kicked out into the cold with their children, was now shining so brightly that even he couldn't escape her light. All of Lucana talked about her. People celebrated the story of the woman who rose from nothing. Naya's journey from dust to dignity had become more than a tale. It had become a symbol, a lesson, a hope, and it wasn't over yet. Then one morning, something happened no one expected. The doors of Baba Kito's grand office opened, and in walked Ikan. The once proud man now looked like a ghost of himself. His clothes were faded, shoes worn, face sunken. Tears had carved deep paths down his cheeks. The same man who once strutted through the city now shuffled, tired and ashamed. He fell to his knees at the entrance of the office where Naya now worked. His voice trembled. "Please, Naya," he cried. "I was blind. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I lost everything. The business, the house, even a penny. My friends are gone. You and the children. You are all I have left. Please forgive me. Take me back." He stretched out his hands, not caring that everyone was watching. The same people who once laughed at Naya now watched her with deep respect. They stood frozen. They had heard whispers of her painful past, but now they were seeing it play out in real life. Ekin, once the symbol of pride, was begging at her feet. The room went silent. You could hear the wind brush against the windows. You could feel hearts beating fast. Naya stood tall in her elegant suit. She looked down at the man who had once humiliated her. Her mind flashed back to those rainy nights on the pavement, the hunger, the cold, the pain of rejection, the faces of her children crying under a street lamp. But that chapter was behind her. She took a long, steady breath. Her voice was soft, but full of power. "Ekin," she said, "the door you slammed on me and our children that rainy night will never open for you again. We moved on. We survived. We built something without you. And today I choose to close that chapter forever." Her words cut through the air like a blade. Ekin's face turned pale. He looked up at the people around him, the same people who once admired him. Now they stared in silence, some shaking their heads. Naya didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her calm voice held more power than any scream ever could. Pekan covered his face in shame. In that moment, he knew this was the greatest humiliation of his life. Not behind closed doors. Not in secret, but right in front of everyone. Naya turned and walked back to her desk. The entire office, staff and visitors alike, nodded in silent respect. Not one person pitied Ekin. All eyes were on Naya, the woman who rose from the ashes and now stood tall and unshakable. Her story had become legend. And yet, she wasn't done. Naya turned once more and looked at Ekin, still kneeling. Would she walk away forever? Would she take revenge? The whole city was watching. News of Ekon's downfall and Naya's rise had already spread through every corner of Lucoma. People whispered, "Will she punish him? Will she forgive him?" Even those who had once laughed at her now leaned in, eager to hear her next words. Naya's mind wandered again to the dark alleys, the hunger, the cold nights, the tears of her children, to the moment Ekon chose a Benny over family, to the moment she stood outside their home, alone. She had every reason to crush him, to repay pain with pain, but she was no longer that broken woman in the rain. She had grown, she had risen, and now she had a choice. She walked toward him slowly. Every step echoed with power. She looked him in the eye and said, "Ekin, I will not destroy you. Not because you deserve my mercy, but because my children deserve to see their mother show strength, not hate." Her voice did not shake. "You taught me pain," she said, "but I will teach them forgiveness. I won't let your darkness steal our light." Gasps filled the room. No one had expected those words. Some had hoped for revenge. But what Naya gave them was a lesson in true power. Ekin bowed his head. He couldn't speak. And across Lucama, people repeated her words. She chose grace. She is truly powerful. Naya walked away, not in weakness, but in absolute strength. She had won, not just in business, not just in reputation, but in spirit, and her decision echoed through the hearts of everyone who heard it. Her story didn't end with forgiveness. It only grew bigger. She had once stood in the rain, broken and forgotten. But now she was a symbol of strength and hope, not just for Lucama, but for every woman who had ever been left behind. With the wealth and respect she had earned, Naya didn't choose comfort. She chose purpose. She remembered the mothers she had slept beside under awnings, the ones who rocked crying babies through cold nights. She remembered the women who had no voice, no shelter, no help, so she built them homes. Naya used her earnings to create safe shelters across the city, places where abandoned mothers and children could sleep without fear, where they would find food, warmth, and kindness. People began calling her the Mother of the Forgotten. Everywhere she went, crowds gathered. Children ran to her with smiles. Women wept at her feet with thanks. Her name was sung in the markets and written in the newspapers. And her children, oh, how they had grown. Once shamed and barefoot, they now walked with their heads held high. They wore clean school uniforms and spoke with pride. They remembered the cold, the hunger, the humiliation, but they turned that pain into purpose. Her oldest daughter founded a program that helped children stay in school. She believed no child should have to drop out because of poverty. Her son began a training center that taught young people practical skills: carpentry, farming, sewing, so they could build a future. With their own hands, they became leaders, not because they were born into power, but because they had survived and learned to rise. Together, they became a beacon in Lucama, a light that guided others out of darkness. Mothers pointed to them and told their children, "See Naya's kids? They were once like us. Now look at them, changing the world." Naya's journey gave courage to the hopeless. It gave strength to the weak. It gave life to those who had nearly given up. And Aiken? He became a whisper, a warning. People told his story in hushed tones. Don't be like Aiken. He threw away gold for glitter. He chased shadows and lost everything. He walked the streets of Lucama quietly, alone, a shadow of the proud man he used to be. His name, once etched in stone, now faded like dust on old walls. But Naya's name? It grew brighter each day. Her fall became the lesson. Her rise became the legacy. And her children became the future everyone believed in. Never underestimate the strength of a heart that has suffered in silence. True power lies not in revenge, but in rising above pain with grace. Those who stay kind in darkness become the light others follow. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African tales of courage, betrayal, and redemption. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next legend.